Hammer was just explaining the devastation the wind did at his home yesterday during that commercial break. James Ham kind enough to join us here a little bit early with KC out for the day. But yeah, it's been a wild day or so of weather here in our region. Shout out to all the cleanup crews who were out there working because I took Sprout for a walk earlier and it was a mess. And by the time I left to come in the studio, they had gotten a pretty good portion of it cleared off of the street. So salute to everybody out there moving tree branches and all of that stuff because it was pretty ugly there for a little bit, and certainly a wild night. And it could be a wild night in Cleveland if the Sacramento Kings are able to shut down one of the hottest teams in the league. Maybe not one of the hottest teams, maybe the hottest team in the league. Sacramento Kings are playing pretty damn well themselves, but the Cleveland Cavaliers have won 13 of their last 14. They've won 5 straight. And Will Z just laid out for us, man. They do it on the defensive end. They do it on the offensive end. And if this win streak is going to continue, or if this stretch of really good basketball is going to continue for Sacramento, it's going to be a tough road ahead against a team that they've played pretty well the last 2 years.
Yeah, this is a really good team, and they're a difficult matchup on paper for the Kings, but in reality, that hasn't really translated. So the Kings have done perfectly fine dealing with the length and athleticism of the Cavs in the past. They've got a couple of guys, Garland and Jarrett Allen, are both questionable, but Sabonis has eaten those guys alive the last couple of times they've played. And I would expect him to do the same to Mobley if we don't see Jarrett Allen on the court. Should be a good matchup. You always talk about the final game of a long road trip. A 7-game road trip is brutally long. These guys
Yeah.
have been away forever. I feel bad for, people like Kyle and Katie who have been out there like on on the road with the team. They don't have the same lifestyle that the players do. They do stay in nice hotels and stuff, but still, it's just a long time away from kids and family.
Yeah, definitely. But they've been treated to some good basketball. This has been a really good road trip for Sacramento, 5-1 so far, headed into this final game, which I think is certainly beyond even our most optimistic expectations headed into this 7-game road trip. What is it about the way the Sacramento Kings have played, really? And I don't know where you lie, James. You could choose to include that 4-game losing streak where they did play really well against Milwaukee but lost. They played really well for 41 minutes against Phoenix and lost, and they had that stinker, I think it was against Indiana. But there has been a collective sample size of good basketball here for Sacramento where it doesn't feel like there's as many, ups and downs as we saw at the start of the season.
Yeah, I think that if we look at that 3-game stretch, 3 or 4 games, it may have been like the thing that taught this team a lot. I think that being in close games is very, very important during the regular season, and having all these blowout wins and losses, they almost don't have value.
Mm,
I hate saying that, but they don't. Sure, you can get the feeling of what it's like when you're just bombarding a team and the feel good for a win. But these close games, and even though they were losses, I think they taught this team that they weren't good enough right then, that they needed to figure out how to close out games, that they had a few things they were doing wrong that if they got in the film room and then got on the practice floor, they could really learn from. And sure enough, we've seen the Kings really handle sort of close games really well over the last, week. And you got a game like Chicago the other night where, they almost blew a 30-point lead, got all the way down to 3. But look, that is the modern NBA. It's certainly 2023-24 season in the NBA where offense is completely king. And you're talking about a team who was on the second night of a back-to-back that's on the I think it was the 4th night of 3 games in 4 nights. They were dog tired and they held on and they found a way to win. And that's what we're talking about. You got to find ways to win. Figure out when everything goes wrong, can you pull together for 5 stops? Can you pull together for 3 minutes and play really solid basketball just to try to hold on? And they figured it out. And so I think we're seeing a good stretch of basketball that realistically, I don't know if it changes your idea about who this team is going forward, or even who this team is, heading into the trade deadline. But you'd rather see him be on a good stretch than a bad stretch, especially when, this thing could have spun out pretty quickly and the season could look a lot different right now as opposed to being 10 games over 500.
How much can we attribute to the way that the Sacramento Kings are playing to whatever light bulb went off in Harrison Barnes, or whatever was said to Harrison Barnes, or whatever has caused Harrison Barnes's field goal attempts and points per game to double in the last 7 games over his season average through the first 41?
Yeah, Damian, it really does feel like that 3-day break that the team had a huge influence on just maybe the perspective of this team about how they were maybe not being as equal and fair to one another as you would hope that they would have been. And I think it probably maybe even started a little bit before that with the way that Kevin Herter woke up out of his slump and
Mhm.
started to play more and more productive basketball. And I think it's possible that Harrison Barnes saw that as a pathway forward for him as well. But I think this Kings team is kind of funny. As soon as one guy picks it up, another guy falls back, and as soon as two guys pick it up, two guys fall back, and so I think throughout this entire season we've kind of seen that where it's really difficult for the top 6 guys on this team, maybe even 7, for all of them to have a really good game at the same time. There's just not enough shots to go around. They've got a lot of offensive weapons. And for me, what we're starting to see now is sure Harrison Barnes is kicking up and Kevin Herter's found his bounce and then Malik Monk has a couple of games where he looks great again. But now you're seeing Keegan Murray fall back. And so Keegan over his last 4 games has 3 games where he scored 5 points and one where he scored 33. Sort of like this inconsistency of a young player, but really
And
I
they
think it's
lost to 33. That's the
yeah.
weirdest part. They lost the game he scored 33 and won the 3 games he scored 5.
Well, I think that's an interesting point, and it might speak to sort of a young player and the way that they're bringing him along, and the fact that his points and his contributions, like they can be big in a game, but I think there are players on this team that maybe their stats are more impactful today, and that you'll slowly see Keegan become one of those extremely impactful players as he gets more as he gets deeper into his career. But for right now, it sure does feel like every time Trey Lyles catches fire in a game, you're going to win. And when Malik Monk brings his A game, the Kings don't lose. And so that's something that, De'Aaron Fox is going to get his points and Domantas Sabonis is going to do his thing. But sometimes the weight of some of these players that aren't taking the step forward, that aren't demanding more shots and more of the, piece of the pie, that those are crucial players for how this team has to advance. And so, I mean, it's kind of an intriguing season to watch because none of it feels like they just haven't like hit on all cylinders. It
Mhm,
feels like even though they're 10 games over, like you're waiting for the backfire. You can hear
mhm.
the engine missing. Like 2 cylinders aren't clicking tonight. And there will be a game where this team figures it all out. And, maybe it'll be like on the last game of a 7-game road trip. You never know. But I also think that the path ahead, the next, once you get past this game, once you get past what is it, Detroit when they come home, it gets really, really difficult going into the All-Star break and coming out of the All-Star break. And I think we'll know a lot more about who this team is after that 2-week stretch more than we will this stretch right here.
Yeah, I wonder if we're starting to see some signs about who this Sacramento Kings team could be. We talked about Keegan, and his kinda struggles on the offensive end, but his impact seems to be there on a night-to-night basis on the defensive end. De'Aaron has been playing otherworldly defensively, in the last 2 games, 11 steals, in the last 2 games. He's had a really good season overall, averaging 1.8, steals, per game. He's 3rd in the league, behind SGA, who is considered the the premium defending guards, and then he's right behind Donovan Mitchell, who's at 1.9, and it feels like that what he was doing on the defensive side of the ball against Chicago was what carried him to that 41 points. You could see his energy, you could see everything shift in him, and he starts to do that thing when he starts to get in a vibe. He hits a shot and he does that thing with his hands, and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, Fox is feeling himself right now. But it was on both ends of the floor. And to me, Hammer, and I'm curious your thoughts on this, the trajectory of this team, maybe not necessarily this year, maybe to a minor degree this year, but the trajectory of this team long term is completely different if we're talking about De'Aaron Fox as a top 3 defensive guard in the league.
Oh, for sure. I mean, if he's going to be a guy who steps into that role and really does, figure it out. First of all, I don't think you can be an elite defensive guard and average 30 a game. And maybe SGA is going to prove me wrong there, but like the long haul of a season is just really difficult. There's a difference between a bunch of steals and being a great defender. And like you can be a marginal defender who gets a bunch of steals. But I think the way that Fox has been able to get deflections and to be engaged, pressure the ball, like
Mhm.
really stop the point of attack, to me, it shows a huge step in his progress. But also, I think when you're in line to make an all-star team, I think most players they understand that to get there, you got to score and you got to be, that guy. You got to be the guy who averages 28 or 30 points a game. And I think when you don't make the all-star team, even though you're doing that stuff, I think there might come a point where De'Aaron realizes that the real substance to who he can be as a player is as a two-way player and not just as his juggernaut as a scorer. The way that the Kings get great is not by Fox scoring more points, is by Fox doing the other things and more of the other things of playing defense, of getting deflections, of going in having a night where he has 6 or 8 rebounds, or a night where he dishes out a bunch of assists. Like there's a way that this team gets way better, and De'Aaron Fox just stays where he's at as a player. And I think he's starting to realize that winning is should be all that matters. It like the accolades, he just kind of got showed the door by the NBA that doesn't matter how big of a number you put up. The only way to earn respect in this league is to win, and not just win in the regular season, but take that next step and win
Ridiculous.
in the postseason.
It's ridiculous. It's not what the All-Star game is. It's ridiculous.
No, I totally get you. I get you, but as a player, you gotta look around and say, "Why did I not make it?" And you can say, "I got jobbed," for sure, but you can also take it to heart and go, "You know what? As a team, we haven't been consistent at all, right?" And so maybe that's where we have to start. Maybe if we become consistent and we keep winning and keep doing the things we need to do, then Sacramento can earn the respect that it deserves. And it's kind of weird because you thought that you got to the end of last season and they just won one award after another, right?
Mhm.
Coach of the year, six man, well, not six man,
Clutch
uh,
player.
yeah, clutch player, executive of the year, all NBA status, all these things. And people
Mhm.
go, oh, well, all you should be worried about is all NBA. It's like, hey, they just voted and you didn't make the all-star team again.
Right.
Do you think you're going to make all NBA? Like, I don't know that that's the case. And that will cost him tens of millions of dollars. Like, because there's a big difference between a guy going into getting a max extension at 35% and a max extension at 30%. And that's if he strings together these two all NBA seasons together. And so, yeah, I mean, this is it is kind of a moment where I think De'Aaron needs to take a step back and reflect. And I hate that they both got left out the All-Star game. I think it's the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. And you could say it could be like recency bias that De'Aaron Fox really didn't have a great month of January, and it's like, okay, well, then what's your excuse for Sabonis? Because Sabonis had one of the best months of January we've ever seen. I mean, the guy's averaging
Mhm.
almost a triple double. and the entire month. And not only that, but he's leading the league in rebounding. He's like fourth in the league in win shares. He's even on NBA.com. He's seventh in MVP balloting, and that's league wide. That's not just a Western Conference. Like, how could you leave one of these guys off the All Star team? And the fact is, I think a lot of people around the league are a little leery on what Sacramento is and who they are as a team. And they should have that same thought about the Los Angeles Lakers, who are just not a good team, or the Golden State Warriors, who are just not a good basketball team at all. They're a bad team. And they still got all-stars, and one of those teams got two all-stars. But I still think that there is something that the Kings have to prove to the rest of the league, and so these things don't happen where they get disrespected like this.
Yeah, I think it's have you ever asked the coach if they did or didn't vote for someone in the All-Star game?
No, I think that's kind of strange because, and I'll tell you, a lot of coaches, they don't take it seriously. That they do hand it off to their assistants, and or they hand it off to an assistant who hands it off to an assistant, or somebody who just scribbles down a bunch of things. I just think it's really strange, and to be honest, like I hope one of them or both of them get in as injury replacements, but there's no guarantee that that's going to happen at all, right? And it's just the reality of the situation. That means somebody's got to get hurt between now and, a week and a
Right.
half from now. And as of right now, I mean, there isn't anyone limping in. It's not like,
There's no
again,
Julius Randle on the West. Like, Julius Randle's hurt. He's not gonna be in the All-Star game. I assume Trae Young is gonna get in. There's no obvious that's
well,
not
Joel
yeah.
Embiid. Yeah,
But
Joel
Joel
Embiid is
Embiid,
gone
yeah,
too.
it's another one. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, but the West doesn't have one of those guys right now. And I do believe if there is an injury in the West, that Sabonis is probably first and Fox is probably second, but still means that somebody's got to get hurt, and I'm not sure that it's going to happen.
It's funny that this team is probably playing at the exact same clip that they were last year when they got 2 All-Stars, but now they value winning because that same clip is good for 5th in the West, better than their Phoenix Suns, who they got 2 All-Stars in there for, but, below Minnesota, Los Angeles, Oklahoma City, and Denver. It's, the thinking is ridiculous to me, and I do think Sacramento still has a stigma to it. I still think Sacramento has a bad franchise stigma to it because last year at this time, James, all we were hearing about for 2 weeks leading into the trade deadline, leading into the All-Star break, and even in the initial days coming out of the All-Star break was how Sacramento was gonna get caught. They were gonna get exposed because everyone was gonna ramp up and they were gonna be better and the Sacramento Kings were gonna fall back. Sure, they could be a cute little story. Sure, they could be, maybe 6th if they play their cards right, but there's no way they're gonna maintain this 3rd spot, and they turned out to be one of the better teams in the entire league in the second part of the season. No one has said that about the Oklahoma City Thunder. No one has made that proclamation about this young basketball team relying on a really good coach, a good rookie in Chet Holmgren, and a superstar in SGA. No one has questioned whether they're going to be able to maintain the 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 struggles of the second part of the season like they did Sacramento last year. It's because they all love Oklahoma City. They all love Sam Presti. It's a team that they've been building up for 5 years. They can't say anything bad about Minnesota because they've been building Minnesota up for 4 years, and this was the first year they were actually right about them. So they can't say anything bad about them. So let's just take it all out on Sacramento because even though they're a season and a half into this run, yeah, we don't buy it.
Yeah, I think the biggest travesty is you brought it up. It's with Cat, right? Cat makes the All Star game, playing for a Minnesota team that very well could do exactly what we thought that the Kings would do last year, and the Kings didn't do. I want to see where it's kind of weird. That's why the All Star break in the middle of the season is kind of strange because you're basically gauging a team not just even on like 50 or 60 games, whatever it ends up being. It's really in order to like make the balloting was in like last week. So you're almost looking at like halfway through the season, like you're making a proclamation on what players are. And like historically speaking, Carl Anthony Towns has been a guy who's quit on his team so many times it's ridiculous. And he's a guy that like has that around the league. And you talk about all these these, talking heads around the NBA who have picked a team like Minnesota or picked Minnesota to take this great leap. And typically they don't take the great leap because he doesn't show up and
Mm.
he doesn't play all the games that he should be playing, and he doesn't take that step that makes his team better. Even like we saw this year, the 62-point game or whatever it was, and it came in a loss to a bad Charlotte Hornets team, and his
Mhm.
coach completely lambasted him. Um, it's weird how, again, like Anthony Edwards is now the media darling that De'Aaron Fox was last year. And so you're kind of waiting for this moment. Like, heaven forbid you compare stats between guys like Steph Curry and De'Aaron Fox, or guys like Anthony Edwards and De'Aaron Fox, like, and then make a decision on, who really does deserve to be there. So I'm kind of with you. I want to see if OKC, if the T Wolves, I mean, because both of those teams could come right back down to earth. The Kings are like on the bubble of that; they're on the top of that second tier,
Mhm.
but that first tier is so catchable, especially when you look at the teams that are there and how they haven't been there before and how they haven't had this sort of success before. And I kind of want to see, if the Kings can claw back in and catch up to the teams at the top of the Western Conference standings.
Yeah, the Kings are playing well enough. It's a question of either will any of those 4 teams play bad enough to fall back a little bit. I don't think Denver will, especially with health. I don't think they'll ever be that inconsistent. The same with the Clippers. They're on a run right now that should be terrifying for the entire conference, but I'm with you in keeping my eye on Minnesota and Oklahoma City, moving forward. My bigger hope is that the Kings create some separation from you talk about that 3rd tier, right? Push the if Phoenix wants to stay in the 2nd tier, somehow push the Pelicans down into that 3rd tier to where the Kings top 6 guaranteed playoff spot gets solidified a little bit quicker, and they're not in the mix for the play-in too late in this season.
Yeah, what I would love to do too, even if you can stick around and somehow find your way to number 4 and
Mhm.
and then match up against one of those young teams, whether it's Minnesota or it's OKC. I'd love to play OKC in the first round. Just like
Mhm.
everyone said last year, they'd love to play the Kings in the first round. Yeah, I mean, the Kings have had their number every single time they played. So, that is a team that I kinda circle and like, "Hey, that wouldn't be a bad matchup." You don't wanna do is play the Clippers. You don't wanna play the Pelicans in the first round, like these matchup, like these teams that are just really, really bad matchups. Unless heaven forbid you go out and you do something between now and Thursday, and you go out and try to clear up some of the issues that you have as a team, and try to bring in somebody to slow down a Kawhi Leonard or a Paul George or a Brandon Ingram, one of those guys that you're going to face in that in first or second round of the playoffs. So yeah, lots of intrigue here, man. I don't know. Like, this has been a really interesting season for the Kings. The roller coaster ride has just been wild, and it's like expectations seem to have gotten to them a couple of times. But even saying that, they're still like the last year they didn't get to 10 games over until game 60. This year they got there at game 48.
Mm.
They were at this point last season, they were a solid team, but they hadn't really taken that next step where you get to 10 games. And 10 games is sort of a magic number, sort of not, but it's a big number because once you get there, it's kind of easy to stack on some extra wins, especially in the second half of the season when some of these teams just bail on the year. And the Kings have plenty of games against those teams that, are either bottom of the Eastern Conference or bottom of the Western Conference.
Well, you brought it up. Is there a move to be made over the course of the next 4 days that helps clean up some of the issues that Sacramento may have?
Yeah, it's intriguing. Should there be a move? Yeah, there probably should be. Will there be a move? I don't know. The
So
Kings
let's
have
start with
been.
that. You say there should be a move. Where there should be a move like a top 5 player move, like a starting position move, or there should be a move like, hey, that second unit needs to be cleaned up a little bit. That's what we're looking at.
Well, I mean, clearly the second unit needs to be cleaned up, but the second unit needs to be cleaned up could be solved by bringing in a player that fills that makes it to the first unit and pushes one of the first unit guys back to the second unit. So yeah, there's all kinds of ways to piece this thing together and get better, right? Like if I were looking at this as the GM of the team, I would probably be looking really, really hard at some of these long athletic forwards, just because, like, look, that's going to be the sticking point. That's going to be what limits you in the playoffs. If you can't somehow defend one of these long athletic guys, you're gonna get beat, And for me, like, if I'm looking at like the way that the Kings have advantages at specific positions, like there's no one in the league that can stay in front of De'Aaron Fox, and there's no one in the league with Steven Adams out of action, and with Kevon Looney not being in the playoffs that can really limit Domantas Sabonis either. There's a couple players who have a chance against Sabonis, but and there are a couple of teams in the league that have done a nice job of slowing down De'Aaron Fox, but you have major advantages at those positions. The problem is that you're giving up so much at that wing defender position. And again, Keegan Murray has come along, has become a much better defender, but that doesn't mean you need another Keegan Murray. Realistically, you need another guy who can do what he does and maybe do it better. And they don't have that player. And so it's not a knock on Harrison Barnes. I would be perfectly fine with a trade that, saw the Kings going out and getting a guy like Kyle Kuzma or Jeremy Grant and holding on to Harrison Barnes and making, and again, if there's some way to do that and hold on to the core of your group and then have Harrison Barnes be your seventh man, man, that's a good team.
Mhm.
And so that's where I'm kind of at. Like, I think that there is a way for this team to get better. Although I'm not on the phone with these teams. I don't know what the deal is that they want. And I brought this up on the insiders earlier today, but there is this saying that when you get to the off season, if you do make the playoffs and your first round pick goes to the Atlanta Hawks, it resets the Stepien rule. And so you go from a team that has some difficulty trading a first round pick until like 2028. But if that 2024 pick goes away, you can trade your 25, your 27, your 29, and your 31. You now get to go back to 7 years out. You can trade back to back picks. You just can't trade them in the future. And so that's where, like, the Kings right now, they can have traded their 2024 and then turn around after the draft and trade their 2025. There is that possibility. And so, like, you would have a lot more ammunition this summer. And maybe that's a better idea to wait until the summer. Uh, Especially since most of your other players are under contract already, except for Malik Monk. Maybe it does make more sense then to really go all in on a move. But, like, we see the limitations, right? Everyone sees the limitations of this team. They're not good defensively. They haven't really improved defensively. They're like point 0.3 better than they were last year as far as defensive rating. It's just the rest of the league is much worse defensively and a lot better offensively this season. But yeah, I would definitely be aggressive heading into Thursday, and I would look for a move that ramp things up a bit.
Why do you think they're so much better defensively on the road? Like, the numbers are pretty staggering. It was like top I think the number was 8. It was certainly top 10, but I think they were 8th in the league defensively on the road. And then, 20 something at home. It's virtually identical to what happened last year. And we were trying to figure out and work through ways like, why is this such a dramatic difference between defending on the road and defending at home? I remember at some point, I think it was De'Aaron last year that said, sometimes we just rely on the home crowd at home. Or I don't remember what player said it. I think it was De'Aaron. But sometimes, at home, we rely on the home crowd. We get up and down. We feed off the noise, but on the road, we're more locked in, which I found both fascinating and frustrating in that, like, hey, that's terrific. You were able to identify the problem, but clearly you can't do anything about it because it feels like you're doing the exact same thing here this year.
Yeah, I don't know why they're not, and they're better at home this year for sure. I think they have a 666 win percentage at home. .667 win percentage. So they are better at home than they were last year, but the defensive disparity doesn't make a lot of sense. And I guess it can just be that you're riding the wave of the crowd, that you're trying to put on a show for your home crowd, that you're scoring in bunches for your home crowd, and in return, you're giving up bunches of points. That can all be part of it. But you know, this dates back years and years. The Kings haven't been a solid home court advantage team since the glory years, and they've got to figure that out. They've got to really, really, if they want to be a 50 plus win team, it has to come at home. And I think right now they're on pace to win, I think, somewhere around 29 games at home. They need to get that number well over 30 if they're gonna hit 50 wins, or at least like be in the low 50s, like where you really want to be. But like it is a problem. It's a problem that they don't seem to have the defensive focus at home, and they get caught up in the moment a little bit too much at home, and they use the energy of the crowd when they're at home. Where a lot of these teams, when they're on the road, you're not selling out to go, like a lot of teams around the league aren't selling out because the Sacramento Kings are rolling in. And, you go to some of these cities that you would think would be good NBA cities, but don't draw a big crowd. And you have to create all that energy yourself. And a lot of ways to create that energy is to do it on the defensive end.
Yeah, I wonder if the next step for this team is defense, right? And you talk about correcting some shortcomings that they have right now headed into the trade deadline. And I'm not sure what's realistic, and you kind of alluded to this a minute ago, James. I don't know what's realistic really headed into Thursday, or maybe not even realistic. What's truly impactful headed into Thursday? And I've been, of these last 2 seasons, like, hey, let's last year was great. Let's see what type of growth this team has together. Obviously, a lot of it depends on Keegan Murray. What's next for De'Aaron and Domas? And next season, this upcoming offseason, headed into next season, will be the first time where I look at this team, like, assuming this season finishes on a positive note with them continuing to play well, and however things end in the playoffs, they end in the playoffs. But next year will be the first time where I look at this team. It's like, okay, you kind of got to do something now, right? Because you've got a couple of years under your belt, and like now, like, what growth are you taking? What step are you taking? And I'm with you of the mindset that if something if something that kind of swings the momentum happens with this franchise, I think it probably happens in the offseason more likely than it happens before Thursday. It feels like, and we talked about this privately. I don't think it was on. It is so awkwardly quiet around the entire league right now. The OG deal has already been done. The Siakam deal has already been done. Both of those were kind of inevitable given their contract situations and everything we know about Toronto. But outside of that, Zach LaVine is out for the season. You're not really sure what Washington is doing, and you're not really sure what Golden State's doing, and it's just kinda like, huh, Thursday may just come and go.
No, I think it is possible Thursday will come and go, but I would also say that a lot of the teams around the league are looking at the same thing I am when it comes to draft picks, and I think there are a lot of situations around the league that will improve on July 1st as far as the draft status. Like, again, the Lakers right now have like one way off in the distance future first round pick and one pick swap to play with, but you get to July 1st and all of a sudden they've got three
Mm.
first round picks to use. I think that that's something that, like, it's one of the dynamics of the league that doesn't always come into play. But if you're a team, I'd even circle like the two guys that we talk about all the time, right? So if the Kings go out and get Dorian Finney-Smith, that's a fair to middling move. Like, it's fine. He's a rotational player. He's a good defender, but we're talking about a guy who averages 9 points a game. Like a 10, 12, $13 million player, right? But the other two big pieces that we keep talking about are Kuzma and Grant. And the problem that the Kings have is that both of them are under long-term deals. Like, Kuzma is in the first year of a 4-year deal, and Jeremy Grant's in the first year of a 5-year deal. And so these players, there is no, like, ticking clock on them to trade if you're the team that has them. And so for a team like the Kings who are coming at, a team like Washington or a team like Portland, like, there's only so much you can offer. Like, nobody wants a 2024 pick. It's not widely considered a good draft, and that's okay because the Kings don't have one. But, teams are gonna want something from the Kings, and the Kings don't have a lot to offer as far as, like, rotational pieces. And then these teams that we're talking about, they really aren't teams that should be looking for rotational pieces. They should be teams that are looking for first round picks or first and second round picks. If you got a couple of young players, that's fine. And it's kind of the reality of the situation. The two guys who might be available that are on bad teams and they're under really long-term deals, and there's not a gun to the head of the GM to trade these guys.
We'll come back. We'll talk more about Kings basketball, the future of Kings basketball, and more specifically, the immediate future of Kings basketball as they'll take on the red hot Cleveland Cavaliers. And because that game's at 4 o'clock, we'll be your official. Sorry, can't say that. Get in trouble. Be your unofficial pregame show here to get you ready for the Sacramento Kings and the Cleveland Cavaliers. It's Stilo and Casey along with our man James Ham here on Sacramento Sports Leader ESPN 1320. Oh man, Roger Goodell. Roger Goodell up there talking about Taylor Swift.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, all
He's
I
not.
kept thinking is, where was Travis Kelce's punk ass last night? You couldn't have flown to Las Vegas late and seen your girl get the Grammy Awards?
I don't know. Maybe he doesn't want to be a distraction. uh,
Nobody give a damn
they're in a
about it.
tough position though, aren't they? And even he is right there, right? If he does that and they lose the Super Bowl, you're gonna hear it like,
Oh, for
oh,
sure. Yeah.
distracted. So, hmm.
I don't know. He should have been there. She even
Yeah,
announced her new album. I didn't. I kind of. I look at everything like wrestling. I kind of felt like that was a work. They set the whole Grammys up for that moment, and it was so obvious she was going to win that award. And I'm
yeah.
not saying she's not deserving. I'm not super. I'm not as familiar as I should be with Taylor Swift, but um, I
People
was
love
like,
her.
well, yeah. I mean, from a little bit I've heard, like I get it, and like those videos of her show, man, she cooking.
Yeah, she puts on a great show. What's the best show you've ever been to?
The best show. Oh man, that's a good one. The best show I've ever been to. Man, I don't want this to be recency bias, but that Renaissance tour I saw in August was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Uh, Beyonce was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Um,
I always like put them in like I rank them in like different ways. Like the best musical show, like,
mhm,
just the best. Like you're sitting there just enjoying the entire night of great music. And then who has the best energy?
mm,
What's the best like overall, like, you know, like I don't know, like Timberlake with his giant runway.
mhm.
Or, like, I mean, I saw Pink Floyd back in the day and the giant crazy, like, pig heads and stuff and, like.
I saw like a favorite show will always be Jay-Z just because he's my favorite artist, and so Jay-Z at the Golden One Center a few years ago was amazing, but I saw Babyface, I think he opened for Boys to Men when I was, like, 19 or so,
Mm,
and he was incredible. Thank you. He was incredible because he did his records and then played the records that he made for other people, and that was pretty awesome.
hmm. Yeah, we just have such a different taste in music.
We do have different tastes in music.
Yeah. See, Brett, I would love to see you 2 at the Sphere. That would be fun. I saw you 2 at Arco, and No Doubt opened for you 2.
I'm not reading that line.
Is this from Charlie?
Yeah.
Charlie out there causing trouble.
49ers Spirit Day on Friday. Yeah. Yeah. J. Cole at Oracle. Oh, very good. I missed J. Cole at Golden One. That was just a huge, massive, massive L on my part. Massive, massive L.
What's the concert that you guys have missed before you guys regret? Like along the lines of that.
Jay-Z at Yankee Stadium.
I don't know. I
Yeah,
mean, I wish I would have seen Prince before he passed.
You never saw Prince?
No,
Oh
no.
man. I saw Prince a couple of times.
But I did see Tom Petty at the Greek
Mm.
in Berkeley, and Stevie Nicks showed up and started singing duets with him.
I've never seen a show at the Greek.
Yeah, that was pretty
Or
cool.
what's the other one? The Bowl. The Hollywood Bowl.
Oh yeah, I haven't seen the Hollywood Bowl. I know not your type of music, but the Eagles years ago, I saw them and they were incredible because all of them played their individual like hits as well as like a collective.
You know what band I would see that I think we would both that I think you would like? Chicago. I would go see Chicago.
I saw Boston, but not Chicago, and and Journey. I've seen Journey, Steve Miller Band a couple of times. I've seen the Doobie Brothers.
Okay, well maybe not. Maybe I thought that might be our branch right there, but I guess not.
I dig Chicago, but like which Chicago?
I think Chicago. It was. I think they're fresh in my mind because they have a residency at the Venetian that I
Really?
think ends the week before I get there. And someone one of the groups of that Foreigner takes over.
Oh yeah, yeah. But I mean,
Because I
you
was
could have
like,
gone and
what can
seen.
we do right at the hotel? And it was like, well, go see Foreigner. I was like, well, all right. I don't think I'm going to do that. But I would see Chicago.
Yeah, but isn't like they kicked Peter Cetera out, and I mean, I don't know. He was so his voice is great.
Yeah, his
I
voice
don't
was
know.
incredible.
When I saw Boston, they had a secondary guy that I believe was
We're
not
coming
part of
back,
the
James.
original. All right.
We're coming back. James and I are having one of the most ridiculous conversations of all times. James and I do not bond over music at all.
No.
I thought I thought I had an olive branch here with the Chicago reference, and he was like, "Nope," but saw Boston, so I was like, "Well."
No, I would love to see Chicago. I you know, but
So it's funny. I'm looking at the picture of Chicago. There's like 20 of them. Like I didn't realize Chicago was such a. Chicago used to tour with Earth, Wind, and Fire, and those shows were amazing.
okay. Yeah, I would have done Earth, Wind, and Fire. Yeah. I don't know. I've been to a lot of shows. Me and Sean, well, Sean Cunningham has been to every show ever.
He is the
Um,
concert god.
he is. He's been to a lot of, but I've been to. I mean, if my sort of genre of music, like I've been to a lot of shows, and I've seen a lot of great bands that are fading or gone now. So,
What would
I've,
you consider your genre of music? 80s rock?
80s and classic rock. I don't know. Power ballads. I don't know, like big Journey guy.
See, James is the reason we can't beat the Eagle. That's what it is. We keep coming up second to the Eagle over there in their classic rock music, and it's all because of James Ham.
Well, if we wore
Damn it,
shorts more
James.
often, we we might have a chance to beat Just In Case.
I don't think my man Just In Case owns a pair of pants.
I
He's
think
got
he wore pants. He wore something the other day that shocked us all. We're like, wait a sec. Is he wearing some sort of pants-like thing? Yeah.
I refuse to believe it. I refuse to believe it. My man has denim shorts on every day, regardless of the weather conditions. Every single day, my man is rocking those. Justin, literally the nicest dude on the planet, man. Love that guy.
Yeah, we talk
Love that guy.
over coffee
Love
every morning.
and love Big 12 basketball. It's number 8 versus number 8 Kansas at Kansas State coming up at 5:45. ESPN 1320 is your exclusive radio home of the NCAA men's basketball tournament for like the third or fourth year in a row, man. Great stuff right there. James, coming up in about 25 minutes, we've got Kings basketball there in Cleveland, taking on one of the hottest teams in the league right now, the Sacramento Kings. Pretty hot themselves. Both teams playing really, really, really good basketball. There's been a shift for the Sacramento Kings. It feels like some of the ups and downs from the early part of the season are gone, and now they're headed in a stretch here where we often talk about the stretch coming out of the All-Star game. James, I got to imagine this stretch going into the All-Star game is pretty difficult. You're ending a road trip. You're coming home for a couple. You got some road games. I got to imagine, regardless of the teams, this stretch right here is pretty difficult because you kind of see a semi-finish line in sight where you get to catch your breath a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the advantages to not making the All-Star team is that you don't have to go to the All-Star game. And as of right now,
Yeah.
the Kings will be represented by Keegan Murray,
Yeah.
and
That'd be good.
that's a big break. The first half of the season, as it's kind of broken up. It's not really the first half, but the pre All-Star break schedule ends on February 14th, and then you still have 28 games to play after that. But it's a like they finished with with a fury here. Like you've got the Pistons, which is a really good like get back home after a long break game to play, and you can't slip up there against a bad Pistons team. But then you got the Nuggets, you got OKC, you got Phoenix, and you got the Nuggets again, and then you play the Nuggets again on
Mm,
February 28th. So in the next 3 weeks, they're going to play the Nuggets 3 times, and they've played well against the Nuggets in the past, but I'm not sure. Like playing well against the Nuggets, that's one thing, but like trying to battle them this many times in this small of a window, they're really, really difficult. And Mike Malone wants nothing more to stomp the Kings every time he plays them. So
it's very
I think
grown
it's
up.
going to be, yeah, it's going to be a very interesting couple of weeks here, especially when it comes to like that matchup in particular.
Yeah, you mentioned the Detroit game coming up before the Denver game. Also, I think there's a San Antonio game too. I think coming right out of the All-Star break on the 22nd. I think that's San Antonio.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, Denver in successive order is tough. But this is what we did last year. We looked ahead to that schedule and said, it's tough, it's tough, it's tough, it's tough. And the Kings were playing good basketball. We see the Kings playing really good basketball right now. And this is just kind of one of those things where you hope they don't let up. And let up doesn't mean lose to Cleveland tonight. Cleveland's a good basketball team. I would love for the Kings to get them. I also hate when the Kings have like a weird advantage, like they've beaten a really, really good Cleveland Cavaliers team 3 times in a row. Those types of things always make me antsy because that locker room in Cleveland knows that they've lost to Sacramento 3 times, and I hate stuff like that.
Yeah, that's never a good thing. But again, they do have some questionable players tonight. Jared Allen's questionable. I haven't been able to catch up to see if anything's changed. And Darius Garland was added to the injury report as questionable today. So, like, look, this is a team that has a ton of talent, a ton of top tier picks. They went out and they gave it all up for Donovan Mitchell, and they're trying to push to be really, really good. But there's also, that little dark cloud that's hanging out in the background that, Donovan Mitchell might not want to be there all that much longer. And I don't think anything will happen between now and Thursday, but that's always something to look forward to. Well, to look out for. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Just real
they're,
quick, James, you've been busy with me. Jared Allen and Darius Garland are both available for tonight's game.
oh, there we go. Okay. Yeah, that's going to be interesting. Yeah, they're a good team. And
Jared Allen's a monster. I like Jared Allen a lot.
I do too, but
I actually like this Cleveland Cavaliers team.
what Sabonis does to Jared Allen is just unfair most of the
Uh,
time.
Hate to see
He
it.
yeah, he just, he gets into his chest, shoves him right underneath the basket, and goes up for easy scores. So, I don't know if that's gonna be the case tonight, but I would be surprised if it wasn't because he's played well against these guys multiple times. And, they're long and athletic, but if you don't worry about that and you just attack, then you should be just fine. The Kings are a good team. Cleveland's a good team. And heaven forbid if the Kings somehow find a way to go 6-1 on a 7-game road trip, that'd
Mm,
be pretty wild.
yeah, yeah, that's pretty amazing. As is the Sacramento Kings' weird relationship with free throws.
Mm.
They they shot free throws really well against Chicago. I think it was 82% against Chicago. That was coming a night after the Indiana game, which they won. I think it was by double digits. I think it was by 11. And they shot like 62% in that game. And of course, you have the ultimate weirdo game of the century where the Kings go 6 of 10 from the free throw line and De'Aaron goes 6 of 10 from the free throw line, and no one else shoots a free throw. What? Clearly, this is just going to be a season long thing where they just have this weird relationship with the free throw line. But what do you think it is? Like, is it just mental? Like, what is it?
Oh yeah, it's mental. I mean, I don't think there's any other way to sugarcoat it. When you typically have a team that is this bad as a collective, free throw shooting wise, it's because you have one player that is just the worst free throw shooter ever, right? And that player is usually one of your top tier guys. So think like Shaq, right?
Hmm.
Or even like when the Clippers couldn't keep DeAndre Jordan on the court late in games because he would get fouled and miss free throws. There's always like one player that just stands out that can't shoot free throws at all. And that's not really the case. The Kings have a bunch of guys who, should be decent free throw shooters between 80 and 90%. And sure, their top two guys aren't great free throw shooters in Fox and Sabonis, but they're not like just the worst of the worst. And, sure, they've got to clean it up. And I actually was just looking, I'm pretty sure Sabonis over his last, handful of games, he's been much better. So, yeah, so over his last 7 games, he's shooting 87.5% from the line. It's only on 3.4 attempts per night, but he's trying to get better and he's trying to do, hit these things. It does seem like there is a focus. Even over his last 13 games, he's shooting 82%, but they got to find a way. And it feels like they've got the yips a little bit in certain situations. I mean, we've seen Malik Monk go on a stretch where he couldn't hit any free throws at all. He cost them a game, maybe two, where he missed free throws in crunch time. It's something that, like, it's a mental block. It's something they have to figure out and they need to get in, whether it's like sports psychologists coming in and hanging out with individual players or as a group, whatever it is, they've got to figure it out and just keep shooting them at practice.
You mentioned the possibility of this team going 6-1 on this road trip, which would obviously be extraordinary. But at this point, they are 5-1. Has that changed? Has this stretch, and we can expand it a little bit further out, has this stretch of basketball from the Sacramento Kings changed your perception on what this team might be at all this year?
Not really. I mean, yeah, they're on a better path right now, but this is all coming on a 4-game losing streak. You've got to show me that you can do it for more than 1 week on, 1 week off, 1 week off, 1 week on. I mean, that's kind of a problem, right? So, I don't know. It wouldn't change what I do at the deadline at all either. Like, and I
Mm.
think that was always a danger coming into this stretch. And, I'd say they keep mentioning this on the broadcast that this is the first time the Kings have ever won 5 games on a 7-game road trip. And they reference like the early 2000s Kings. I just want to point out that the early 2000 Kings, like, they didn't play 7-game road trips. So there's nothing to compare it to. Um, and they did actually, like, in back-to-back years in '01 and '02 and like '02, '03, they did play one 6-game road trip where they went 6-0, and another the next year they had a 6-game road trip where they went 5-1. So that stat just keeps getting shoved out there, and I'm not quite sure why. Because I mean, sure, it's factual, but it's kind of misleading because the Kings have actually had better road trips than this in their history in Sacramento.
Well, it can't be worse than the other stat that's getting thrown out there.
Uh,
The Domantas Sabonis is the franchise leader for consecutive double-doubles.
Well, and
I
then
felt so bad. For those that don't know, that stat was everywhere. It was on NBA, it was on ESPN. The Kings had to issue a follow-up saying, "We're sorry, the previous research or whatever, that's actually inaccurate." They thought the franchise leader, they thought it was like 29 or 30 from
31, Oscar Robertson, and he should have tied it last
and
game.
it's actually like 42.
Oh no, it's worse than that.
Oh,
The
yeah.
the total streak over
Tomas
2
isn't even
seasons,
close.
the total streak over 2 seasons is 55,
Oh my god.
and I
Yeah,
think
Tomas isn't even close.
the single season streak is 45. And
Okay.
for some reason, it was StatHead that was pulling up the wrong stats, but Elias was able to correct it. And yeah, it's Jerry Lucas has like the longest streak of all time, which
Yeah,
if you have, yeah.
that just came out of nowhere. It was like, "Oh
Yeah,
gosh."
we were all sitting here waiting for it to. I may even had a part of my 6 quick thoughts. Oh, he's tying the record tonight, and then it's like, oh no, it's not even close. I mean,
Yeah.
I think right now he's tied for the second longest streak, but that other streak, the single game and the double in a single season, I believe is 45, and in over 2
Yeah.
seasons is
So
55.
it's 46. And
46, my bad.
he's tied with Jerry Lucas, who also had 30, and Oscar Robertson had 29. That's the single season streak. The longest streaks for overlapping in the season, that's the 55 you were referring to, that stretched from January of 68 into the beginning of the next season.
Yeah.
I can't lie. I thought that was funny. I was like, "Oh, Domas isn't even close to the record. We don't have to talk about this for 4 or 5 months."
Yeah, we got a long time.
Got a lot of time.
I mean, and the funny thing is that he's come up against it last couple of games where you're like, "Oh, is he gonna not get a double-double?"
Mhm.
You know, whether it's like he can't score all of a sudden, or there's one game where he went into halftime with 2 rebounds, and by the late third quarter he had 9, and you're like, "Oh, he's got this one again." So, yeah, it's kind of fun. I I'm not gonna bag on the guys who messed up the stat, or it happens. It happens to everybody with that stuff, but yeah, it's gonna be a long time. Like, and it's not like you get a plaque for it or anything. It's just a franchise record. He owns a Sacramento era,
Well,
and
that's
that's
the
by a long
thing.
shot.
That's all I care about. Like, with all due respect to our ancestors, I'm good. Like, come on. Like, what are we
Hey,
talking about? I don't
Jerry
care.
Jerry Lucas was a bad man. You should go
That's
look at
fine.
his. You should go look
No,
at his stats.
it's fine. He was on the was he I don't even know if he was Kansas City or Rochester. But
Cincinnati.
unless
Cincinnati.
bruh, come on, man. Like, I don't care. Like, tell me he's got the longest streak in Sacramento? Hey, he's got the Kings record in my book.
And during the 65-66 season, Jerry Lucas averaged 21.5 points and 21.1 rebounds per game.
But that's that Wilt era. How tall was Jerry Lucas?
6'8". He also shot 45%
Really?
from the three. So I'm wondering, they didn't track what was offensive and what was defensive. Yeah, he was a 6'8" power forward. He's still alive. He's 83 years old. Yeah.
Could he get a double-double today?
Well, modern NBA probably. There's a lot of misses out there.
If he was on the Hawks, he probably could.
That's true.
Yeah, Domas is also racking up triple doubles. They got Malik Monk on the screen. Most assists off the bench, most 20-point games off the bench, most clutch points off the bench, most clutch field goals made off the bench. on the heels of two worthy all-stars being snubbed, is there any shot Malik Monk actually wins the Sixth Man of the Year award this year?
Yes. Mainly to drive up the price and maybe outprice him out of Sacramento, because that would be like a league-wide conspiracy. See?
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Incredible. Absolutely incredible.
He's funny. He says, "Hey, I should have won it last year." He said that multiple times. Like, all right.
I really appreciate Malik and his whole disposition. Like, he was asked about the guys getting snubbed from the All-Star game, and he's just like, I'm not surprised. People still sleeping on Sacramento. Like, he didn't like I get and then that to me, that's one thing I just appreciate about Malik is like if you act like he's just gonna answer, like he's gonna tell you exactly what he's thinking. He's not gonna try to give you a soundbite. He's literally gonna tell you exactly what he's thinking. Mike took a different approach. Obviously, Mike was really, really upset about those guys not making the All-Star team. And that's what I would hope my coach would be if we were snubbed out of some honor. But I just appreciated the fact that Malik was like, no, I'm not surprised. People still ain't. Because outsiders think it's just us. Oh, you guys don't think anyone's paying attention to Sacramento. No, the players don't either. Malik, like, yeah, y'all ain't paying attention to us. Y'all still sleeping on us. It's fine. It's
I
fine.
agree.
Keep it moving. Oh, James is trying to sneeze. No, that's good. He's trying. Y'all can't see this. James is trying to mute and he's trying to sneeze and he's trying to have my back and the whole deal. I guess
I figured it out. It went away, I guess. It may come back. Yeah, I mean, I think, the league is they fall in love with like the shiny penny, right? And right now the shiny penny is the Timberwolves and OKC. And they've just moved on from the Kings. The Kings aren't interesting anymore because it's not new. And sure enough, if they make it past the first round, everyone will be like, "Oh my gosh, we knew this team was going to be this good. We just didn't know it." Like whatever. Like it's a weird place that the Kings are in because they go from the darlings one year to just left out the next. And
So
like
weird.
I hope that it is like the driving force behind what they do for the rest of the season.
I hope so. I hope it's the driving force from this increase in defensive presence that we've seen from De'Aaron Fox. And, stats wise, we have two of the better defending point guards in the league tonight. Donovan actually had a rough night the last time the Sacramento Kings and Cleveland Cavaliers played earlier this season in November. So I'm hoping to see that continue. I don't have swing stats or keys to a game or prize picks. I just want to see these two premium point guards go at it because Donovan is nasty, man. They're actually doing a breakdown right here. It looks like Keegan might draw the assignment. They're showing a breakdown of Keegan. I guess while Keegan is the prime defender, Donovan was 2 of 10 the last time these two teams played. And, Keegan has just emerged as just such a really great defender that the whole trajectory of this team, I feel like, sits on his shoulders.
I totally agree with that. And tonight, if I'm Mike Brown, I hit him with Keegan as much as possible. But then if Keegan gets in foul trouble, if you've got to go a different direction, or Keegan will need a break, I'd hit him with Davion. Davion has played Donovan really well and gets into his body. Like he gets super aggressive. And I think between the two of them, you can give them really, really different looks that both could be impactful. So I don't know. It's a pretty big it's been a pretty big game tonight. You want to finish strong. You don't want to make excuses for coming up short on on a really long road trip. Like go finish it. Go leave it all out there and see what happens.
Should be pointed out too before we go. Cleveland, really, really good at home as of late. They're 17-8, but I think they've won 8 home games in a row. Big thanks to James Ham for spending a little extra time with me. Thanks to Will Z for being with us. Most of all, thank you